Thank you for taking the time to join us today. This month's DFCS Discourse is geared more toward OFI, but includes important information for the entire agency. Today, Deputy Director John Anderson and I want to talk about what's going on in OFI, specifically speaking to safety in the workplace and the blueprint for change. There are a couple of attachments included in the email with this link. Please refer to them throughout the discourse. They include the Blueprint for Change flyer and a PowerPoint developed by John that speaks to OFI and the Blueprint for Change. I've heard from several OFI staff during the recent roadshows that they don't always feel included in the agency's initiatives. I want to address that. But before I do, I want to talk about safety in the workplace. As you may know, in the last couple of weeks, we've had several incidents where our staff have been in harm's way while at work. First, we had a bomb threat that came into the OFI call center to a staff person there. Then we had a social services staff person witness a terrible tragedy while going out on a CPS referral. And 2 weeks ago, a staff member had her car stolen while being held at gunpoint in the parking lot. These are serious concerns. As public servants, we are in contact with desperate people who sometimes turn violent. The first thing I want you to know is if you do not feel safe, call 911 right away. You don't need to ask your supervisor or anyone else. If you don't feel safe, please call 911 and then let your supervisor and the county director or your section director know that you contacted the authorities. Secondly, we were working on some resources for staff to give them the skills needed to de-escalate a situation. We've contracted for training called verbal judo. This is the same training law enforcement officers take, and we intend to make it available to all staff. We've started rolling this out already with child welfare staff, and I've heard very positive feedback about it. We will be rolling out the DFCS OFI staff in the coming months. I'm also requesting a situational awareness course be made specifically available to those OFI staff via the LMI system. Finally, every county has an emergency plan, and I'm asking county directors to review the plan again with staff so that you'll know the county process for alerting someone of a situation. But remember, if you feel anytime unsafe, please call 911. Now, I want to talk for a few minutes about where we are in OFI and our plans for moving forward with our Blueprint for Change. This is where we've been. Like many states, the past several years have been very hard. We struggled under budget cuts, and as a result, our service to customers, the morale of our staff, and ultimately our public image has suffered. We've had a 70% increase in caseloads and a 22% decrease in staff. Our quality and timeliness have been greatly impacted and has declined. We went from being one of the top performers in the SNAP program in 2009 to almost last place in 2014. Trying to do more with less, we ended up doing a lot less. In January of 2014, we attempted to move from the traditional model of county-based services to a statewide first-come, first-served centralized task management system. It didn't work out well for us for several reasons. One, the technology wasn't where it needed to be, from the phone system to the eligibility support tools. Try to move to a modern world using old world tools, and that always proved to be challenging, frustrating, and ultimately it will probably result in failure. We had two phone platforms, one for each of our call centers. Neither of them had the advanced tools needed to effectively move our work or to help us serve our customers. We have since replaced our phone systems with new platforms that have more advanced tools. We are able to look at data in real time, which helps us move performance in our call center and our staff. We're working with a 17-year-old mainframe eligibility system that has workflow tools that help case managers organize their days, keep their appointments with customers, perform budget calculations, issue benefits, establish and track claims, and automate notices. We also have a 7-year-old online application system that provides self-service to customers that access to the internet. We also have a 2-year-old document imaging system that was originally intended to be a support system to our staff and replace the paper case files. We went from a system where a worker used 3 main tools, Success, the paper file, and the phone on their desk, to a system where they had to sign into 4 or more systems, all with 15-minute timeouts to get their work done, all using an Excel spreadsheet for tracking. As you can imagine, this was very time-intensive and error-prone system. As part of the same process, we moved away from traditional case management and moved toward task management. We assigned tasks daily. If a case manager didn't complete that task, it was reassigned the next day to another worker who started the process over again. In the SNAP program, we had upwards of 6 case managers touching a case prior to a final decision. In the Medicaid program, we found one case that had 30 case managers touch the case, and it was still incorrect. We had multiple checklists asking for the same documentation. As part of the centralized process, we also closed every avenue for customers to contact us except for one toll-free line. We essentially took 3,000 county phone lines and pointed them to one phone line at the state level. We had phone wait times in excess of 6 hours. As you can imagine, these processes led to a 66% SNAP timeliness rate in federal fiscal year 14 and a 6.49% SNAP error rate in that same year. Ouch. The other eligibility programs didn't fare much better. The good news is Georgia Gateway, our integrated eligibility system, will combine all of our standalone systems into one seamless system. I'm confident our one caseworker, one family practice model, combined with the updated IES technology, will set the stage for great improvements in our service to families and our overall OFI outcomes. When I was appointed DFCS director in June of 2014, I said I would give the centralized system 6 months to improve. It didn't, and at the end of that 6 months, I brought John on to assess the issues and construct a new practice model that would improve access for our customers and improve our timeliness and accuracy rates. I have no doubt about what I want to see for the division. That is, I want us to be the best family and children's services agency in the world. In order to be the best agency in the world, we need our staff with our front door and our preventative assistance going out to families. We have to ensure a simple, seamless process for families to access the needed financial supports that they need, and to also provide technology and tools needed by caseworkers to get benefits to families quickly and efficiently. In many cases, having access to food, medical attention, and child care services will allow families to care for their children and keep them from having further involvement with our agency. By now, I hope many of you have had at least heard about our plan to strengthen the services we deliver, called Blueprint for Change. It's a high-level perspective and consists of 3 things: the adoption of a practice model, the development of a robust workforce, and constituent engagement. In child welfare, this means solution-based casework as a practice model. It means hiring more staff and developing a career ladder. It also includes constituent engagement, meaning that we're going to engage those both internal, our own staff, and those who are external in our communities we serve and are interested in the work that we do. Right now, I'd like to introduce you to our first ever guest on DFCS Discourse, Deputy Director John Anderson. John, will you share a little bit with us about your professional experience here at DFCS?
I sure will. Thank you for having me, Bobby, and thank you for choosing OFI first to be your first guest on the OFI Discourse. So as many of you know, I've been with the state since 1992. I started as a caseworker in the food stamp program in Clayton County. And since that time, I've worked in 4 different counties as a caseworker, both in intake and ongoing. That was what we called at that time. And then I moved up to the state level and did several jobs. I did statewide supervision, multi-county supervision, and then moved on up to the OFI section director, and I oversaw all the policies that we had at that particular time. And then I moved to the DCH in the 2009 to help them implement 2 major pieces of legislation that affected the Medicaid program and the Beach Care for Kids program. And then when I came back here in February of this year to DFCS to try to help DFCS with some of the issues that they've been facing with the Georgia One model. So when I came in February, I recognized a lot of the issues that we were having. I quickly pulled together a team of staff from all levels of the organization to address the issues, look at the issues, and sort of break everything down. And one of the things that we saw quite quickly was that assignment and reassignment of work was not working well for us. It didn't lead to accountability, and it didn't lead to good customer service. So at that time, I also was introduced to Ginger Pryor, who's Child Welfare Deputy Director, and she was talking about the Blueprint for Change, and we both recognized that we both needed to do something to change. We had the same goals in mind. One is accountability for staff and customer service. So when she was talking about the practice model, as we move into the practice model piece, we called our version of that one caseworker, one family, because we weren't getting good outcomes when multiple people were touching the same case. So to get to one caseworker, one family, it really led us to, we need to get back into local supervision and serving people in the local county, making sure that there's a supervisor on site or very close to that worker to be able to provide the support that worker needs when you come out of training. When I started early in 1992, I was told that it would take me about 9 months to learn the system and learn how to do my job, and I didn't believe them. I went to policy training. It lasted 6 weeks, and I didn't think it would take much longer after 6 weeks for me to be proficient in the program. But then as you get in, as most of people know, when you come out of policy training and you start interacting with families, what they taught you in policy training had nothing to do with real life situations, and you had to apply that policy. So you had to have extra supports to be able to be proficient in the job. There's things that happen that after you input all your data into the system, you do the best interview in the world, you get all the right verifications. There's things that happen in the system that go to interface with other systems, like the Medicaid program. Whenever you approve a Medicaid case, there's a nightly file that goes over to the Medicaid system that actually brings that data in and generates the Medicaid card and sends that card to the family, and helping families understand how that process works in the time frame. It's just one example of things that caseworkers have to learn as they go through. The other thing that we looked at really in the Georgia One model, what we were basically trying to do was just share the work statewide. As you clearly said earlier, that we had staff shortages over the years, that there's a huge amount of staff to lose, and at the same time we were gaining on those caseloads. So we're trying to equalize the caseloads as much as we can and get back into that local supervision. So as we move into the robust workforce development, we're doing a lot of the same things on the OFI side that the child welfare staff are looking at, and that the development of a career ladder. I mean, there's different, not everybody wants to learn all programs. Not everybody wants to do all programs. So I think sometimes we have to recognize that somebody's going to be the best Medicaid worker in the world, but they're not going to be the best SNAP worker. So we need to be able to accommodate that in our organization and see how we can move people up through the ladders of casework and through the ladder supervision. And as we get closer to IES, we'll be able to roll out some of that thought process and some of what we're thinking on how we readjust our job classifications and models. We're looking at flexible schedules again. I mean, we were in the Georgia One model. It was everybody 8 to 5, no matter what. And sometimes that doesn't work schedules and actually burns us out quite a bit, because we need that flexibility to. I'm a morning person, and if you make me stay till 6 o'clock at night, I wouldn't be very productive about half the day. So we have to recognize that we are have different levels of people. We work at different places at different times of the day. We're looking at mentoring plans to make sure that all our staff, including supervisors and caseworkers, have somebody they can go to get the answers that they need to be able to be the best they can be in their job. We're doing quarterly statewide supervisor summits to get supervisors up to speed with how to manage all the different types of generational folks that we're bringing in these days. You hear about the millennials and the X and the Y generation, and all the technology that's out there now that we have to sort of work our way through and make sure that we're communicating with all those staff on the level that they can understand. We're looking at regional casework universities as well to refresh everybody that's been trained in the food stamp and the Medicaid and child care programs, and refresh them on policy knowledge and make sure that they're continually sharpening their skills. As we move into constituent engagement under the Georgia One model was almost impossible to do. It was all virtual supervision, it was virtual caseload, and DFACS is not the answer to everybody's problem. I mean, DFACS should not be the last stop that people make when they. And DFACS has to work with the community. You have to work with the local food banks. We have to work with the clothing banks and the shelters, the domestic violence shelters. You have to have those connections. It can't happen in a virtual environment. It's impossible to keep those spreadsheets and those resources up to date with what's going on in those communities, because those things change every day. And I can't tell you how many times I was in the county, and sometimes the food bank would call and say, hey, we've got extra food today, can you send us some more referral? Or they would call and say, we're out of food, don't send us any more. You can't do that in virtual supervision and virtual caseloads. You have to have that connection with those local communities. The child welfare staffing is another thing, and we've probably read in some of our weekly communications that I think that we as an agency are responsible for the foster kids and the kids that come into our care, and we are not the answer to all the problems. We can't keep those kids ourselves, so we have to recruit foster homes, and we want to make sure those foster parents have the resources that they need through the medical system, through the child care, and the food stamps to be able to help those kids while they're in their care. So that's another piece of that we couldn't do under our old model that we'll be able to do more of in this model with constituent engagement. I think we'll be much more accessible to customers. I think our local community agencies and leaders will be much happier with the services that we're providing, because we're providing services in those communities to the people that live in those communities, and that's what DFACS is all about, making sure that we are serving the local folks in the local communities as much and as quickly as we can. We establish weekly communications. I try to communicate often, but I don't want to communicate sporadically. So I limit my communications to Fridays, and that's been difficult for some of my staff to understand that you don't just send an email whenever you're ready. Let's get it organized, get it ready to go, and then let's package it up on Fridays and then get it out to everybody so that we're consistent and everybody knows to be looking for an email from me on Fridays. We have two email boxes that we did early on because staff were telling me, I'm having problems that I can't seem to get traction on the resolution to my problem. And I had people telling me that we're not doing things the way we ought to be doing them, and nobody can listen to me that way. So we created the Hear Me account, Hear Me at DHS.gov, for people to say, those people that were in those situations where they've exhausted every avenue they could and they still can't get a resolution to the problem. And I want to make sure all of our employees get an answer, whether it's yes or whether it's no, they deserve an answer. And Stomp It Out is more about trying to figure out what are we doing efficiently? What can we do better? And we've gotten a lot of great ideas, a lot of responses from those two email boxes, and I think it's done well for me. I know because I man those boxes as often as I can and try to act on everything that comes through. We also instituted some employee recognition programs, one called the Peach Star program, and we issue certificates. We started that a couple of weeks after I started in February, and we consistently are getting referrals. We want to recognize individuals who get Peach Stars for good customer service and dedication to the agency. And most recently, within the last 2 months, we started the Quality Star program, which is for those caseworkers that have their records read by the Food Stamp Quality Control Unit and the Medicaid Quality Control Unit at DCH. If they do a good job of doing their cases and help us get to a better accuracy rate, they should be recognized, and they will get a Quality Star on their records. So that's a few of the things that we're doing in supporting the blueprint for change in those 3 areas. But I wanted to tell you just a real quick story too about what child welfare means to me. I'm an OFI guy. I've always been an OFI. I've never been in the child welfare arena, but I have been a customer of DFACS on the child welfare side. In 2009, my wife and I adopted a little girl from Florida, and we had to depend on the ICPC staff here at the state office to help us get our paperwork so we could cross the Florida line back into Georgia. And that process generally takes about 2 weeks to do that. And we were stuck in a hotel, one-room hotel in a very small town in Florida, and just ready to get back home with a new baby and get her all set up in the crib and everything. And the staff here was just phenomenal. They getting that through. They just knew what they were doing. So I understand what it's like to be a customer on the child welfare side, and I really appreciate that. But I appreciate you having me here today, and I look forward to continuing along the continuum of the blueprint for change.
Thank you, John. We really appreciate you joining us today. I think it's so important that we all look at the kind of stories that you share. I share oftentimes that I am adopted and was adopted very early in my life, about 10 months old, from the child welfare system in North Carolina. I lived up until that point in an orphanage. That's how old I am, how long ago this was. But I was adopted by a family that really loved and cared for me. They provided me with everything that you could possibly provide me with, and especially the discipline that I needed. But they also were like any other family. They had hopes and dreams for not just for me, but for themselves. And as I went through, my early years, it really didn't dawn on me the importance of these kind of programs. Had no idea they existed. I always knew that I was adopted, but the interesting thing was that when I was around 7, my father got seriously ill, and he had always been a hard worker. He and my mom both worked at jobs that were pretty much minimum wage jobs, but they worked hard, and we got by like other families do. Unfortunately, he came down with a serious illness and was not able to work. And I remember overhearing a conversation that I probably shouldn't have heard, where they were talking about my dad having to quit work and needing medical care and not having insurance. So as they talked, my dad expressed that he really didn't want to go on welfare, as he called it. And my mom said, you know, sometimes you have to swallow your pride and you have to do things that you don't want to do. And you're going to have to do this. You're going to have to go apply for assistance at the Department of Social Services, we call it in North Carolina. They did that. I also had these times that I considered pretty fun. On Sundays after church, we would drive to the next town. And I always thought that was a great adventure. We were just going to buy groceries. But the reason, as I know now, that we were buying groceries in the next town was because my father didn't want people knowing that he had to use food stamps, and very embarrassed about that. So I understand the stigma that families feel. Luckily, my father got better. He was able to get the medical care he needed. He went on to get his GED. He worked for the state of North Carolina for the rest of his working days, and was the mayor of my hometown for 26 years. Now retired and doing very well. My mom went on to add to her education. She never was able to graduate, but she was a community outreach worker for a community action program in North Carolina for 25 years. So she spent her whole working career helping people. I went on to graduate, of course, and become the director of the county agency where I was adopted in North Carolina, and served people that I grew up knowing. So I know really how important firsthand it is that families have safety net programs like Medicaid and food stamps, and that without them, my outcome could have been very different. My father may not have been able to recover. That would probably interfere with my ability to get my education. So I want to say to all of our employees that I understand this, and that the work that you do is critical to families to prevent unnecessary suffering to children, to help with hunger and medical needs that they have. And it also is a reminder to me that my mom was able to get good services when she went to apply for these programs. And it really pains me to know that we have employees that don't have the necessary tools sometimes to do their jobs, or that they have such large caseloads that they're not able to provide the kind of time that's needed with the clients that are asking for these services. So I want to just let you know, I understand what you're doing, I understand the importance of it, and I want to provide you with all the support that I possibly can in order to make your jobs better, so you in turn can do the kind of work that you need to do to help the children and families of the state. Along with John, I want to let you know that I am advocating, and John's advocating on every opportunity for our staff with the governor's office, and advocating for increased compensation for all employees, and especially for those in OFI who I understand need these raises. I also want to let you know that I was able to talk to the governor and ask his budget office to work with us on raises. In response, I think several agencies had asked this, and the governor has asked them to look at giving 3% raises to all employees across the state that work for the state of Georgia. I'll keep you posted on that as time goes on. That's a significant commitment on the part of the state, but something that I think all of our employees deserve. So John, thank you again for joining us. Thank you for joining us from where you work, and I hope you have a great day. We are moving forward and going to do very well in achieving our goal of being the best child and family services organization in the world.